Hey guys, tonight we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most uncomfortable, but most important, parts of history, the story of medical progress. We tend to think of science as a clean, linear path towards the truth, but the reality is often a messy, ethically questionable, and sometimes downright disturbing series of experiments, often performed on people who had very little say in the matter. Tonight, we're going to explore what it was like to be a part of that process, a witness to, and sometimes a subject of some of the most disturbing medical experiments in history. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't have survived being a test subject in the past. Forget the experiment itself, the lack of an ethics review board alone would have been a major red flag. In previous eras, the primary ethical guideline for medical research was often a shrug, followed by a confident, "Let's see what happens." There was no informed consent. You, the patient, were often the last to know that you were a participant in a groundbreaking and quite possibly fatal new study. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet and simple way to support the channel. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where and when you're tuning in from. Go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always a little fascinating to see our community of history lovers spread across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your world is one of light, shadow, and the perfect, elegant line of the human form. You are a young artist, an apprentice in the workshop of the great Titian in the vibrant, intellectual city of Padua, Italy. The year is 1543, and you are living in the beating heart of the Renaissance. Your life is dedicated to capturing the beauty of the human body on canvas. But to draw the body, you must first understand it. And so, your artistic education has led you to a strange and often macabre place, the Anatomy Theater of the University of Padua. You have become a student and a part-time assistant to the most brilliant and controversial professor at the university, a young Flemish physician named Andreas Vesalius. He is a man with a burning passion, a sharp tongue, and an even sharper scalpel. And he is at war with a man who has been dead for 1,300 years, for more than a millennium. The entire science of human anatomy has been based on the writings of one man, the great Roman physician, Galen. His texts are treated with the same reverence as the Holy Scriptures. The professors at the university simply read from Galen's work, while a lowly surgeon's assistant dissects a body, pointing out the parts that correspond to the ancient text. There is no new observation. There is only confirmation of the old wisdom. But your master, Vesalius, believes that Galen was wrong. He argues that Galen, for religious and cultural reasons, rarely dissected human bodies, and that his anatomy was based primarily on the dissection of Barbary apes and pigs. And Vesalius is determined to prove it. And so, you find yourself in the university's anatomy theater. It is a steep, circular, and cold wooden room, designed like a classical theater. The tiered benches rise up around a single, starkly lit marble slab in the center. The room smells of preservatives, of cold stone, and of the faint, metallic tang of old blood. It is a place of science, but it is also a place of spectacle. A public dissection by the great Vesalius is one of the most popular events in the city. The theater is packed. Students, fellow physicians, city officials, and even curious townsfolk have all gathered to watch the show. Then, the subject is brought in. It is the body of a recently executed murderer, his sentence having included this final posthumous indignity to have his body publicly dissected for the advancement of science. He is laid out on the marble slab, his pale, lifeless form the centerpiece of this strange, scientific theater. Vesalius himself makes his entrance. He is a showman. He does not sit in a high chair, reading from a book. He stands at the slab himself, his sleeves rolled up, his fine set of gleaming surgical instruments laid out on a table beside him. He is here not to read, but to see, to demonstrate, and you are here to draw. Your job is to be the artist of this scientific revolution. You stand at your easel, your charcoal and your paper ready. You are one of the artists tasked with creating the illustrations for your master's great. Forthcoming book. A book that will be called De Humani Corporis Fabrica, on the fabric of the human body. The dissection begins, and it is a performance. Vesalius, with his scalpel and his probes, moves with a surgeon's precision and a lecturer's flair. His voice echoes in the hushed, cold theater as he begins to systematically dismantle not just the corpse on the table, but the entire 1,400-year-old edifice of Galenic anatomy. Galen tells us, he says, his voice dripping with theatrical scorn, that the human jawbone, the mandible, is made of two separate bones, fused together, a conclusion one might draw. Perhaps, if one had spent one's career dissecting the jaw of a dog. With a flourish, he holds up the cleaned jawbone of the corpse. But behold, the human mandible is a single, solid bone. Galen was wrong. A gasp goes through the audience of physicians. To question Galen is like questioning the sun. He continues. Moving through the body, a whirlwind of discovery and demonstration. Galen tells us the great sternum, the breastbone, has 7 segments, like that of an ape. But the human sternum, gentlemen, has 3. He holds up the bone for all to see. He dissects the liver. Galen describes 5 lobes, but the human liver has only 2, with every cut of his knife. He is waging a war against the tyranny of ancient authority. He is arguing for a new kind of science. A science based not on the blind acceptance of old texts, but on the direct, empirical, and sometimes bloody evidence of one's own eyes. Your own work is frantic and requires intense concentration. You must capture what he is revealing with perfect scientific accuracy. You sketch the intricate, branching patterns of the nerves. You draw the beautiful, complex architecture of the human skeleton, which Vesalius has had his assistants reassemble. You are not just an artist drawing a body. You are a cartographer, mapping a new and undiscovered country, sometimes for his book. He has you draw the anatomical figures in strange, dramatic poses. You draw flayed men, their muscles exposed, standing in heroic, classical postures against the backdrop of a beautiful Italian landscape. It is a bizarre and uniquely Renaissance fusion of art, science, and a kind of ghoulish theatricality. As you work, you are caught in a strange conflict of emotions. You are thrilled by the spirit of discovery, by the sense that you are at the very center of a great turning point in human history. But you are also a man looking at the dismembered body of another man, a public spectacle for a curious crowd. And you must wonder about the ethics of it all. This is a debate that future historians will have. Was Vesalius a pure, heroic scientist, bravely seeking the truth in the face of a dogmatic establishment, or was his work, which relied on the bodies of executed criminals and was performed as a kind of gruesome entertainment, a practice that was ethically questionable, even for its time? The dissection is nearing its end. The corpse on the table is no longer a human form. It is a collection of its constituent parts. Vesalius has proven his points, again and again. The foundations of Galenic medicine have been shaken to their core. The students in the audience are buzzing with the new, controversial, and undeniable knowledge they have just witnessed. You are left with your drawings, a portfolio of beautiful, precise, and deeply unsettling images. You have drawn the true, inner fabric of the human body. You look at your final drawing, a perfect rendering of the human skeleton, and you know that your master has done more than just dissect a body. He has dissected an entire worldview. He has stripped away the flesh of tradition, of dogma, of blind obedience to ancient authority, to reveal the hard, undeniable, and beautiful bones of the truth itself. The old world of medicine, a world based on the texts of men who studied apes, is dead. A new world, one based on the direct observation of the human form, has just been born here in this cold, bloody, and magnificent theater. You leave the world of Renaissance Padua, with its cold stone theaters and its arguments against the ghosts of ancient physicians, and you travel forward in time. The world you enter now is not one of city-states and burgeoning science, but a world of green fields, of quiet villages, of a different kind of knowledge, and a different kind of fear. Your world is now rural Gloucestershire, in England, at the very end of the 18th century, in the year 1796. You are no longer a student of art and anatomy. You are a young boy, perhaps 8 years old. Your name is James Phipps. Your father is a poor landless laborer, and your world is one of mud, of farm animals, and of the simple, hard realities of country life. Your future is a predictable one. You will grow up. You will work the land as your father does, and you will live and die in the same small village. But you're small. Quiet world is haunted by a great and terrible monster. It is a monster that comes every few years, a specter that stalks the villages and towns, leaving a trail of death and disfigurement in its wake. It is the smallpox. You have seen its work your entire life. You see it in the faces of the adults in your village. Many of them are marked by the disease, their skin covered in the deep, pitted scars that are the calling card of a survivor. You have seen it take your own friends. You have seen children who were healthy and playing 1 week be dead and buried the next. Their bodies covered in the horrifying, pustular rash. Smallpox is not a distant threat. It is a constant, terrifying, an accepted part of the fabric of your life. It is the great lottery of existence. And everyone knows that one day, their number may be drawn in your village. There is a physician, a kindly, intelligent, and deeply curious man named Dr. Edward Jenner. He is not like the grand, theory-obsessed physicians of the cities. He is a country doctor, a man whose knowledge comes as much from listening to his patients as it does from his medical books. And Dr. Jenner is obsessed with a piece of local folk wisdom, a story that has been told by the country people for generations. It is a story about the dairymaids, the young women who work with the cows. You have heard the story yourself. Everyone has. The dairymaids, it is said, do not get the smallpox. They are, for some reason, immune. They are often afflicted by a different, much milder disease called cowpox, which they catch from the cows. It gives them a few pustules on their hands and a slight fever, and then it is gone. And the local belief, the old wives' tale, is that having had this minor, insignificant cow sickness somehow protects a person from the great and terrible human sickness of smallpox forever. Most educated men, most physicians, dismiss this as a peasant superstition, a piece of rural nonsense. But Dr. Jenner does not. He listens. He observes. He has seen for himself that the dairymaids who have had cowpox do not seem to die in the smallpox epidemics. And he has begun to form a radical, brilliant, and deeply dangerous idea. He believes that this folk wisdom is a profound medical truth. He believes that he can harness the power of the cowpox, that he can deliberately give a person this mild disease. In order to protect them from the deadly one, he is searching for a way to test his theory. But he needs two things. He needs a source for the cowpox, and he needs a human test subject, a healthy subject who has never had smallpox, a subject whose parents trust him enough, and are perhaps poor enough, to agree to allow their child to be a participant in a bizarre, unprecedented, and potentially fatal experiment. And one day, in the spring of 1796, Dr. Jenner finds both. The source is a young dairymaid in your village named Sarah Nelmes. She has a fresh, active cowpox sore on her hand, a weeping pustule filled with the clear fluid. The lymph, that carries the cow sickness. And the test subject. The test subject is you. You do not understand the details. You are a child. Your parents are poor laborers. Dr. Jenner is the respected local physician, a man of science and authority. When he comes to your small cottage and speaks to your father, you do not hear the entire conversation. You only see your father. His face a mixture of fear and a kind of desperate hope. Nodding his agreement, you are to be a part of the doctor's great experiment. The day of the experiment arrives. Dr. Jenner comes to your cottage. He is not alone. He is with the dairymaid, Sarah Nelmays. He brings with him his small, leather medical case. You watch, your heart pounding with a child's fear of the unknown. As he opens it, he takes out a small, sharp knife, a lancet. He goes first to the dairymaid. He asks her to show him her hand. He gently, carefully, takes his lancet and he scrapes a small amount of the fluid. The pus, from the cowpox sore on her hand. He collects this material on the tip of his lancet, and then he turns to you. Your father holds you steady. Your mother is looking away, her hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. You are terrified. You try to pull away, but your father's grip is firm. Dr. Jenner takes your arm. With the tip of his lancet, the same one that is now coated with the matter from the cow's disease, he makes two small, shallow cuts on your skin, just deep enough to break the surface. He then carefully rubs the infectious material from the lancet into your open wounds. The procedure is quick. It is not terribly painful, just a sharp sting. But it is profoundly, deeply, terrifyingly strange. A respected man of science has just deliberately, with your parents' permission, infected you with a disease from an animal. The experiment has begun. In the days that follow, you sicken, just as Dr. Jenner predicted. You develop a mild case of cowpox. You have a slight fever. Your arm aches. A single, characteristic cowpox pustule begins to form at the site of the incisions. You feel unwell, but it is a minor, manageable illness. After a little over a week, your fever breaks and the sore on your arm begins to heal. Dr. Jenner visits you every day, observing your symptoms with an intense, scientific focus, taking meticulous notes in his journal. The first part of his experiment is a success. You have been successfully infected with cowpox, and you have easily recovered. But now comes the second, and far more terrifying, part of the experiment. The part that will either prove him a genius who will save millions of lives, or a reckless fool who has just killed a small boy. He must now prove that your infection with the cowpox has made you immune to the smallpox, and there is only one way to do that. He must deliberately expose you to the smallpox itself. This is the moment that future medical ethicists will debate for centuries. Was this a heroic and necessary act of scientific inquiry, or was it a monstrous, unethical gamble? A deliberate exposure of a healthy child to a deadly pathogen? With no absolute certainty of the outcome, you are at the very heart of that debate. You are the human guinea pig. A few weeks later, Dr. Jenner returns to your cottage. This time, he carries a different kind of infectious material. He has taken it from the pustules of a patient who is suffering from an active, virulent case of smallpox. He has, in his possession, one of the deadliest poisons known to man, and he is here to give it to you. Once again, you are held by your father. Once again, you see the terror and the hope on your parents' faces. Once again, Dr. Jenner approaches you with his lancet. He makes a new incision on your other arm, and he deliberately, carefully, introduces the lethal matter of the smallpox directly into your bloodstream. Now, there's nothing to do but wait. The days that follow are a time of almost unbearable tension for the adults around you. You, a child, are largely unaware of the stakes. You just know that the doctor is watching you with an intensity that is frightening. Your parents watch your every move. Their faces a constant mask of anxiety. Every time you cough, every time you complain of a headache, they look at each other with a flash of panic. A day passes. You feel fine. 2 days, a week. You do not develop a fever. The dreaded rash does not appear. The pustules do not form. You remain perfectly, completely, and miraculously healthy. The cowpox, the mild, insignificant disease of the dairymaids, has indeed given you a shield. It has protected you from the great and terrible scourge of smallpox. The experiment is a success. The theory is proven. Dr. Jenner is triumphant. He knows he has just made one of the most important discoveries in the history of medicine. He has found a way to conquer the smallpox. He has invented the practice that will one day be called vaccination, from the Latin word for cow. Vacca? You do not understand any of this. You do not understand the profound, world-changing significance of what has just happened to you. You only know that you feel well, and that the kind. But very strange. Doctor has finally stopped poking you with sharp things. You are James Phipps. You are the boy who was given a disease to cure a disease. You are a quiet, unwitting hero, and you are the first vaccinated person in the history of the world. You are no longer in the ordered, scientific world of a Renaissance university. Your world is not a world of books or of art. You travel forward in time again to a place that is, in its own way, even more of a frontier. You are in the vast, wild, and unforgiving wilderness of the North American continent in the early 19th century. The year is 1822, and you are a young, strong, and entirely ordinary French-Canadian man. A voyageur, making your living in the rough and tumble world of the fur trade. Your world is one of canoes and forests, of beaver traps and roaring campfires. It is a world of immense hardship and of profound freedom. And you are about to become the subject of one of the most famous, most bizarre, and most ethically questionable medical experiments in all of human history. Your story begins not with a theory, but with a bang. You are in the retail store of the American Fur Company on the remote outpost of Mackinac Island. In the middle of the Great Lakes, the room is crowded with other trappers, with soldiers from the nearby fort, with native traders. A man is demonstrating a shotgun. He is careless. The gun goes off by accident, at close range. You are standing only a few feet away. The world explodes in a roar of sound and a cloud of black. Acrid smoke. You feel a blow to your side so powerful it is like being kicked by a horse. You are thrown to the floor. You look down, and you see a hole in your side. A ragged, horrifying wound from which a piece of your own lung and your stomach are protruding. You feel a strange, warm wetness spreading across the floorboards. You are dying. A doctor is summoned from the fort. He is a young, ambitious, and highly competent army surgeon named Dr. William Beaumont. He kneels beside you. He looks at your wound, a gaping hole the size of a man's fist, and he knows, with all of his medical certainty, that you will not survive the night. He does what he can. He cleans the wound. He pushes your insides back into your body. He applies a dressing, and he waits for you to die. But you do not die, against all odds. Through a combination of your own tough, Voyageur's constitution and Dr. Beaumont's skilled, if pessimistic, care, you survive. For the next 2 years, you are his patient. He nurses you back to a semblance of health. You are weak, you are scarred, but you are alive. But the wound does not heal properly. It heals in a strange and miraculous, and for you, a deeply unfortunate way. The edges of the wound in your stomach wall attach themselves to the edges of the wound in your skin, and it creates a fistula, a permanent, open hole, a channel, leading directly from the outside world into the dark, mysterious, and previously inaccessible world of your own stomach. When the dressing is removed, A small valve of stomach lining often flops out, but it can be easily pushed back in. Dr. Beaumont can, quite literally, look inside you. This is where your story changes. You cease to be a patient, and you become an experiment. Dr. Beaumont, a man with a deep and restless scientific curiosity, realizes that he has been given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The process of human digestion is, in your time, a profound mystery. What happens to food after it is swallowed? Is the stomach just a grinder? Is it a kind of fermenting vat, or is it, as some believe, a living creature with its own vital spirit that dissolves the food? No one knows for sure. But you, with your strange and unfortunate window, you hold the answer. You are a living laboratory. Dr. Beaumont, his scientific mind buzzing with the possibilities, decides to take you under his care permanently. You are too weak to return to your life as a voyager, so he hires you as a household servant, a handyman. It is an act of charity, but it comes with a condition. You must make your body available to his scientific inquiries. And so begins your new, strange life as the man with a hole in his stomach. The experiments are a new and daily routine. They are uncomfortable, they are undignified, and they are relentless. Dr. Beaumont begins by simply observing. He has you lie on a table. He removes the dressing from your fistula, and he peers inside, his face filled with an intense, scientific focus. He watches as your stomach churns and moves. He watches as the gastric juices, the mysterious fluids of your own digestion, slosh and bubble. Then, he begins to experiment with the juice itself. He uses a small, flexible rubber tube to siphon the clear, acidic gastric fluid directly from your stomach. He collects it in vials. He discovers that this juice, even outside the body, has a remarkable power. He puts a piece of boiled beef in one of his vials, and he watches. Astonished, as the beef slowly dissolves, he has proven that digestion is not a mere grinding, and it is not a mystical vital force. It is a chemical process. It is a solvent, but is most famous, and for you, most miserable. Experiments are the ones involving the silk string. He takes small, carefully measured pieces of different foods, a piece of boiled beef, a cube of bread, a bit of salted pork. He ties each piece to a length of silk string, and then he dangles the food through the fistula, directly into your stomach. You must lie there for hours, with a string hanging out of your side. A strange and terrible human fishing line. Every hour, he pulls the string out, retrieves the piece of food, and he observes how much it has been dissolved. He takes meticulous notes in his journal. At 1 hour, he writes, the beef is half digested. At 2 hours, it is entirely gone. He tests dozens of different foods. He is creating the first true scientific account of the rate of human digestion. It is a groundbreaking, and for you, a deeply unpleasant piece of research. You've become the world's first and only window into the human digestive system. You feel like you should be charging admission. He tests the effects of your own mind on your stomach. He observes that when you are angry or agitated, the lining of your stomach becomes red and inflamed, and the digestive process slows. He is, without knowing it, documenting the first evidence of the psychosomatic nature of digestive health. You are a man of simple origins, a poor, illiterate fur trapper, and you have become the most important subject in the history of gastroenterology. But you are also miserable. Your wound is often sore and painful. The experiments are intrusive and humiliating. You are a medical curiosity, a freak of nature, a servant who is also a science project. You long for your old life, for the freedom of the forest, for the simple hard work of the canoe. This is the great, unresolved ethical debate at the heart of your story. Was Dr. Beaumont a brilliant, pioneering scientist who rightly seized a unique opportunity to advance human knowledge for the benefit of all mankind? Or was he an obsessive and fundamentally exploitative, researcher who took advantage of a poor, vulnerable, and uneducated young man, subjecting him to years of discomfort and indignity for the sake of his own ambition. The truth is that he was probably both. He saved your life. He gave you a home. And he also, in many ways, stole your life from you, turning you into a living specimen, a man defined by his wound, after a few years of this strange existence. You have had enough. You are tired of being a servant. You are tired of being a laboratory. One night, you simply run away. You flee from Dr. Beaumont's care, and you make the long, arduous journey back to your home in Canada, back to the world of the voyageurs. You marry. You have children. You try to live a normal life, but you cannot escape your own fame, or your own strange physiology, and Dr. Beaumont cannot bear to lose his most precious research subject. He tracks you down. He writes you letters. He pleads with you. He offers you money. He appeals to your sense of scientific duty. He convinces you to return. And so begins a strange, codependent, and often acrimonious relationship that will last for years. You are his great experiment. He is your reluctant patron. You will flee from him several more times, and he will always, eventually, lure you back. You are the man with the hole in his stomach. You are a walking, talking, and often deeply resentful breakthrough in medical science. The knowledge that is gained from your unfortunate wound will be taught in medical schools for the next 200 years. But for you, the price of that knowledge is a life of constant, quiet, and inescapable misery. You are a living exhibit in a museum of one, and you long for the day when the show will finally be over. You are no longer on the wild, windswept frontier of the American continent. You travel forward again in time, to a world that is, in its own way, just as wild and full of pain. Your world now is one of polished wood, of gleaming and terrifying steel instruments, and of the constant, high-pitched sound of human screaming. You are an apprentice to a dentist in Hartford, Connecticut, in the year 1844, and your job is to witness, and to assist in, the brutal reality of surgery before the age of anesthesia. Your master is a man named Horace Wells, a skilled, respected, and deeply compassionate dentist. And this compassion is the source of his daily torment, for he is a man whose profession requires him to inflict almost unimaginable pain. You work in his well-appointed office on Main Street, and you see the terror in the eyes of his patients. You see them grip the arms of the dental chair, their knuckles white. You see the sweat bead on their foreheads. Your job is often to help hold them down, to restrain their thrashing bodies. As your master, with as much speed and as much mercy as he can muster, performs an extraction with a terrifying, medieval-looking tool called a dental key. The procedure is a brutal, violent act of twisting and pulling. It is less a medical procedure and more a controlled, scientific brawl. The success of a dentist in your time is measured not just in his skill, but in his sheer physical strength. Your master, Dr. Wells, hates this part of his job. He hates the pain he must cause. You see the look on his face after a particularly difficult extraction. It is a look of profound, weary sadness. He is a healer who must hurt people in order to heal them. And he is constantly, obsessively, searching for a better way. The first hint of that better way comes not in a medical journal or a scientific lecture, but in a handbill, posted on a wall, advertising a public entertainment. It is an advertisement for a grand exhibition of the effects produced by inhaling nitrous oxide, or laughing gas. A traveling showman and chemist named Gardner Quincy Colton is putting on a demonstration. It is a new and wildly popular form of public amusement, the laughing gas frolic. Your master, Dr. Wells, his mind always searching for new ideas, decides that you will both attend. He is not going for the entertainment. He is going as a man of science, curious about this strange, intoxicating gas. You arrive at the public hall that evening. It is packed with a noisy, expectant crowd. The atmosphere is like that of a circus or a magic show. The showman, Colton, a man with a flair for the dramatic, stands on a stage. Beside him is a large, oilcloth bag connected to a tank. He gives a long, pseudo-scientific lecture on the wondrous properties of his nitrous oxide gas, claiming it will transport those who inhale it to a state of sublime, euphoric bliss. Then he asks for volunteers from the audience. Several young men, full of bravado and cheap liquor, stumble onto the stage, one by one. Colton places a wooden mouthpiece connected to the bag into their mouths, and he instructs them to inhale deeply. The effects are immediate and dramatic. A quiet, respectable clerk becomes a crowing rooster, flapping his arms and strutting around the stage. A burly blacksmith begins to weep uncontrollably for no reason. And another, a man named Samuel Cooley, becomes a whirling dervish of manic energy, running and leaping around the stage, laughing hysterically. He is completely, gloriously, and publicly intoxicated. The crowd roars with laughter. It is the 19th century version of reality television. A chance to watch your neighbors make utter fools of themselves for a small admission fee. But then something happens in his manic, stumbling dance. Mr. Cooley runs directly into a heavy wooden bench at the side of the stage. He strikes his shin against it with a sickening, audible crack. The impact is so severe that it tears his trousers and leaves a deep, bloody gash on his leg, but he does not seem to notice. He continues his frantic, laughing dance, his leg bleeding freely, leaving a trail of dark, wet spots on the wooden stage. He eventually stops his dance, his euphoric state wearing off, and he returns to his seat in the audience. Still grinning. Dr. Wells, your master, leans forward, his eyes narrowed with an intense, scientific focus. He points to the man's leg as the effects of the gas fade completely. Mr. Cooley himself looks down at his own bloody leg, a look of profound, dazed surprise on his face. I did not feel it. He mutters to the man sitting next to him. I did not feel a thing. A quiet, electric thrill passes through you and your master. The rest of the audience saw a clumsy man make a fool of himself. But you and Dr. Wells, you have seen something else entirely. You have seen a miracle. The gas did not just make the man laugh, it had erased his pain. That night, Dr. Wells is a man possessed by an idea. He does not sleep. He paces his study. He has found it. He has found the holy grail of his profession, a way to separate the surgery from the suffering. The very next day, he decides to conduct his own experiment, and he will be the subject. He has a troublesome wisdom tooth of his own, one that has been aching for weeks and that he knows must be pulled. He summons Gardner Colton, the showman, to his dental office. He also summons a fellow dentist, a man named John Riggs. And he summons you, his apprentice. You are now a participant in a moment that will change the history of medicine. The scene in your quiet, respectable dental office is a strange one. Your master, Dr. Wells, sits in his own operating chair. The showman, Colton, stands beside him with his bag of nitrous oxide. The other dentist, Dr. Riggs, stands ready with a pair of forceps. And you stand by, your heart pounding, as the witness, Dr. Wells, takes the mouthpiece. He begins to inhale the sweet-tasting gas, deeply and steadily. His eyes glaze over. His body goes limp. He is in the euphoric, insensible state. He gives a small, prearranged nod. It is the signal. Dr. Riggs steps forward. He opens Wells's mouth. He takes hold of the troublesome tooth with his forceps, and with a single, strong, practiced twist, he pulls it out. Your master, Dr. Wells, stirs as the effects of the gas begin to wear off. His head lolls for a moment. He spits a mouthful of blood into a bowl. A look of dazed, ecstatic, and triumphant discovery dawns on his face. He exclaims the words that will become famous in the annals of medicine. I did not feel it so much as the prick of a pin. You have just witnessed the first painless dental extraction in the history of the world. You have just witnessed the birth of anesthesia. The story of this discovery, you will later learn, is a complex and often bitter one. Future historians will engage in a great academic debate over who truly deserves the credit. They will speak of a doctor in Georgia named Crawford Long, who had used ether in surgery a few years earlier but had never published his results. They will speak of William Morton, a former student of your own master, who would later successfully demonstrate the use of ether in a great public surgery in Boston, and who would try to claim all the credit and the fortune for himself. But you, in this moment, you know the truth. You have seen it with your own eyes. You have seen your brave, compassionate, and brilliant master, Horace Wells, be the first to truly understand the potential of this strange gas, and the first to be brave enough to test it on himself. He is filled with a messianic, almost holy, zeal. He believes that he has been given a divine revelation, a gift from God to end the tyranny of surgical pain for all of humanity. He knows that he must not keep this discovery to himself. He must share it with the world. He must convince the great skeptical and conservative medical establishment. He makes a decision. He will travel to Boston. He will go to the great Massachusetts General Hospital, and he will arrange a demonstration for the most famous and most respected surgeons in America. You help him pack his bags, you pack his dental instruments, and you pack the oilcloth bag and the tank of nitrous oxide. You are a young apprentice from a small dental office in Hartford, Connecticut, and you're about to go on a journey to show the world that you have discovered a way to conquer pain itself. You are filled with a sense of hope so profound that it makes you dizzy. You believe you are about to change the world. You are no longer in a world of screaming dental patients and theatrical showmen. You travel forward in time again. Your journey through the history of medical experimentation, now taking you to the dawn of a new, more scientific, and supposedly more enlightened century. Your world is now one of laboratories, of microscopes, of a new and powerful certainty. You are a man of the modern age, a young, ambitious physician in the United States Public Health Service. In the early years of the 20th century, the year is 1914. You have been trained in the new science of bacteriology. You have read the great works of Pasteur and of Koch. You know that the great scourges of humanity, cholera, tuberculosis, anthrax, are caused by tiny, invisible, living germs. Your profession is no longer about balancing humors or fighting miasmas. It is a war against microbes, and you are a soldier in that war. Armed with the powerful new weapons of the laboratory, you are dispatched on a mission to the American South. Your task is to investigate a strange, terrible, and stubbornly persistent regional plague. It is a disease that has haunted the poor, rural South for decades. It is called pellagra, and the medical establishment is convinced it is an infectious disease. You arrive in a world of grinding poverty. You visit the great, isolated, and self-contained institutions where the disease is most rampant. The state asylums, the orphanages, the prison farms, and you see the work of the disease firsthand. It is a slow, methodical, and horrifying destroyer of human life. A disease that becomes known by its 4 terrible calling cards, the 4 Ds. It begins with dermatitis. You see the patients, the inmates of these institutions, with a strange, dark, and scaly rash. It appears in a perfectly symmetrical pattern on the skin that is exposed to the sun. A dark, butterfly-shaped rash across the face. A gauntlet-like rash on the hands and arms. And, most famously, a dark, necklace-like lesion around the neck. The Casals necklace. Then comes the diarrhea, a chronic, wasting, and intractable intestinal ailment that leaves its victims emaciated and weak. Then, the most terrifying symptom of all dementia, The patient's minds begin to decay. They become confused, depressed, and often violently paranoid. They suffer from hallucinations. In the asylums, their symptoms are often tragically mistaken for a simple worsening of their underlying mental illness. And the final D is death, if left untreated. Pellagra is a slow, agonizing, and almost invariably fatal disease. You are assigned to work under a brilliant, determined, and famously unconventional officer of the Public Health Service, a man named Dr. Joseph Goldberger. He has been tasked with finding the cause of pellagra, with finding the germ that everyone is sure must be responsible. Dr. Goldberger is a man of relentless logic and keen observation, and as you and he begin your investigation, traveling from one institution to the next, he makes a simple but profoundly important observation. He notices that in every single asylum, every prison, every orphanage, the pellagra attacks only the inmates, the staff, the doctors, the nurses, the guards who work in the very same buildings, who breathe the same air, who are in daily, close contact with the sick. They never, ever get the disease. Your colleagues in the medical community have all sorts of complex theories for this. Perhaps the staff has a natural immunity. Perhaps the disease requires a long latency period. But Dr. Goldberger has a simpler, more radical idea. He concludes that if pellagra were an infectious disease, at least some of the staff would have gotten it by now. Therefore, he declares, pellagra cannot be an infectious disease. He makes another observation. He notes the one stark and consistent difference between the lives of the inmates and the lives of the staff. It is their diet. The inmates of these poor, state-run institutions are fed a monotonous, unvarying, and cheap diet. It is a diet of the 3 M's meat, a small amount of salt pork, meal, cornmeal, and molasses. The staff, however, eat a different, more varied diet. They have milk, fresh meat, eggs, and vegetables. Dr. Goldberger forms his great hypothesis. Pellagra is not a germ. It is not a poison. It is a disease of malnutrition. It is caused by the simple, monotonous, and nutrient-poor diet of the rural South. The medical establishment of the South reacts to this theory with a furious, defensive hostility. It is an insult. It implies that their great and prosperous region is so poor that its people are suffering from a disease of starvation. It is a social and political accusation, not a medical diagnosis. They cling to the old theory that pellagra is an infection, likely caused by a toxin in spoiled corn. The great debate rages, and Dr. Goldberger decides that he will prove his theory with the irrefutable logic of a scientific experiment. His first experiment is to prove that he can cure the disease with food. You are a part of this study. You go to 2 orphanages in Mississippi where pellagra is rampant, at both institutions. You make no changes to the sanitation. You do not try to kill a non-existent germ. You simply, dramatically, improve the children's diet. You use government funds to provide them with fresh milk, with eggs, with meat, with vegetables. The results are stunning. Within a few months, the pellagra in both orphanages has been completely wiped out. The skin lesions heal. The diarrhea stops. The confused, listless children become bright and healthy again. You have cured an entire epidemic, simply by feeding the children a balanced meal, but the skeptics are not convinced. They argue that you have not proven that the diet cured the disease, only that a better diet can help a patient resist the unknown germ. And so Goldberger decides on a second, more terrible, experiment. He has proven he can cure the disease. Now he must prove he can cause it. He finds 12 healthy volunteers from a Mississippi prison farm who agree to participate in the experiment in exchange for a full pardon. You are a horrified witness to this study. The 12 healthy men are isolated in a special, clean, and screened-in building, and for the next 9 months. They are fed the classic, monotonous, 3M diet of the poor South. The results are a slow-motion horror story. after a few months. The men begin to complain of weakness, of stomach pains. Then, the telltale dermatitis appears on their hands and necks. By the end of the experiment, a majority of the healthy volunteers have developed the classic, undeniable, and full-blown symptoms of pellagra. You have caused the disease. Not with a germ, not with a poison, but with a simple, poor diet. And still, the medical establishment is not convinced. They cling to their infection theory, Dr. Goldberger. Now a man driven by a profound and righteous frustration decides on one final, dramatic, and disgusting experiment to prove his point once and for all. He will prove, with his own body, that the disease is not contagious. He organizes what will become known as his filth parties. You are invited to participate. It is a voluntary, but deeply serious affair. You and a small group of his most loyal assistants, including his own wife, gather in a laboratory. Dr. Goldberger stands before you. He has a collection of samples he has taken from patients in a local pellagra hospital. And then, with a kind of grim, scientific ceremony, you and the other volunteers begin the horrifying process of trying to infect yourselves with pellagra. You are given small pills to swallow. They are made of the dried, ground-up skin scabs from the dermatitis lesions of pellagra patients. You have your own skin on your arm abraded with a needle, and a nurse rubs the pus and the sores from a sick patient directly into your open wound. And then comes the final, most terrible part of the experiment. Dr. Goldberger takes a sample of a pellagra patient's blood. He mixes it with a small amount of their feces and urine, and he injects this foul, septic cocktail directly into your arm. You have just participated in what is surely the most disgusting experiment in the history of science. You have tried, in every conceivable way, to give yourself the disease. You and the other volunteers are quarantined and observed, and the result is the final, definitive proof. Not a single one of you gets sick. You have proven beyond any shadow of a doubt that pellagra is not an infectious disease. It is not contagious. It cannot be passed from person to person. It is a disease of the diet. You feel a sense of profound, triumphant vindication. But the victory is a hollow one. For even after this, after all the proof, after all the evidence, the medical establishment of the South will refuse, for another 20 years, to accept the truth. The social and political implications of admitting that the plague of the South was a plague of poverty were simply too much for them to bear. You have won the scientific battle, but the war against the misinformation, the war for public health, is far from over. The experience in the Javanese hospital is the final, clarifying piece of a puzzle that has haunted you for your entire professional life. You have seen Dr. Eichmann's chickens, paralyzed by the clean, white, modern rice, and cured by the coarse, brown, primitive rice. You have seen his brilliant, if flawed, conclusion that there must be a toxin in the white rice and an antitoxin in the brown. But you are a man who has seen too many other puzzles. Your mind is a museum of strange and seemingly unrelated diseases, all linked by a single, invisible thread. You leave the Dutch East Indies an old man, your career behind you, and you return to England, to a quiet retirement, to finally make sense of it all. You sit in your small, book-lined study, a fire crackling in the hearth. The world outside is a world of progress, of steam engines and telegraphs, of a medical science that is supremely confident in its new germ theory. But you are obsessed with the diseases that the germ theory cannot explain. You take out your old journals, your notes from a lifetime of practice, and you begin to connect the ghosts. You're great. Unifying theory does not come in a flash of divine inspiration. It comes slowly, piece by piece, as you force yourself to look past the prevailing wisdom of your time and to trust the simple, stubborn evidence of your own eyes. You begin to believe in a new and radical idea, the sickness of absence. You think back to your first posting, to the Naval Hospital, You remember the sailors dying of scurvy, their bodies literally falling apart. You remember the litany of useless but scientific-sounding cures, the elixir of vitriol, the wort of malt, the bleeding, and you remember the quiet, undeniable miracle of the stolen orange. You had been taught to look for a cause in the bad air of the ship, in the putrefaction from the salt meat, but the cure was not the removal of a bad thing. It was the addition of a good one. The sickness was an absence of whatever vital principle was hidden in the fruit. You think of your time in the dark, smoky, sunless slums of Manchester. You remember the children with rickets, their small bones bending like green twigs. You remember blaming the industrial miasma, the foul air from the factories, but you also remember the strange patterns that the children of the rich, who lived in the sunny homes, did not get the disease. You remember the folk remedy of cod liver oil, a treatment you once dismissed as superstition. What was absent in those dark, sunless alleys? What essential thing did the sun, or the oil from a fish, provide that was missing from the bodies of those poor, deformed children? You think of your years in the asylum in the American South, of the terrible, seasonal plague of pellagra. You remember the decades-long, fruitless search for a phantom toxin in the spoiled corn? But you remember your own crucial observation, the inmates, who lived on a monotonous diet of the 3 M's meal. Meat. And molasses were the only ones who got sick. The staff, who ate a varied diet with milk and fresh vegetables, were immune. The poison was not in the corn. The poison was the lack of everything else. And finally, you think of Dr. Eichmann's chickens. The final, perfect, elegant proof. The sickness was not in the polished white rice. The sickness was caused by the absence of the humble. Discarded rice husk. You sit in your study, and you see the grand. Unifying theory of your life's work laid out before you. Scurvy, rickets, pellagra, beriberi. They are not 4 separate mysteries. They are 4 different chapters of the same story. They are all diseases of absence. It is a profound and deeply counterintuitive idea. For 2,000 years, the entire history of medicine has been based on the idea that disease is a hostile presence. It is a demon to be exorcised, a humor to be bled, a miasma to be ventilated, a germ to be killed. You are now proposing something far stranger. You are proposing that the body can be utterly destroyed by a simple nothing, by an invisible hole in its own nourishment. This is a true paradigm shift, a concept that future historians of science will study. It is a new way of thinking about the very nature of health and of life. It proposes that the body is not just a machine to be repaired when it breaks, but a complex garden that requires a constant supply of tiny, essential, and still unknown nutrients to flourish, filled with a new, urgent sense of purpose. You decide you must try, one last time, to share your discovery with the world. You are an old man now. You have no career to protect, no reputation to lose. You have only the truth as you have seen it. You spend a full year writing a great, comprehensive treatise. You do not fill it with angry polemics, as you saw the tragic Dr. Semmelweis do. You fill it with the quiet, methodical evidence of your own long career. You describe the cases you have seen, the diets you have recorded, the patterns you have observed. You lay out your theory of essential nutritive factors, the term you have coined for these invisible substances, and you send your manuscript to the most prestigious medical journal in London. You wait. The reply, when it comes many months later, is polite, and it is a rejection. The editor praises your long and distinguished career. He finds your clinical anecdotes to be of great interest. But your central theory, he writes, is purely speculative. You have offered no proof. You have not isolated these factors in a laboratory. You have not shown them under a microscope. You have not determined their chemical composition. The world of medicine he informs you, is a world of rigorous, material science. It cannot, he says, be based on the philosophical musings of a retired physician. However experienced, you read the letter, and you feel not anger, but a kind of quiet, weary resignation. You have the right answer, but you are speaking a language that the science of your time is not yet equipped to understand. You are a clinician, a man who has learned from observing human suffering. The world of medicine is now run by the laboratory scientists, by the men with the test tubes and the microscopes, and until the truth can be proven in a laboratory, it is not the truth. You put your rejected manuscript away in a wooden chest with your old journals. It will remain your own private discovery. You have solved the puzzle. At least for yourself, you will live out your days with the quiet, lonely satisfaction of a man who knows he was right, even if the world never knew his name. You have spent a lifetime looking for the ghost that caused disease, and you have finally understood that sometimes. The ghost is the fact that there is simply nothing there at all. You live out your years in your quiet English cottage. A man who has seen the world and its many miseries, and who now prefers the company of his books in his garden. You are a relic, a living fossil from a bygone era of medicine. But you keep up with the world. The postman brings you the latest medical journals from London, and you read them with a magnifying glass. Your old eyes tracing the march of a science that has finally, belatedly, started to ask the right questions. The turn of the century brings with it a great intellectual firestorm. You watch, from your quiet retirement, as the great hunt for the vital almonds of Casimir Funk, the accessory food factors of Frederick Hopkins, consumes the world of chemistry and medicine. It is a new age of discovery, a heroic age of the laboratory, and one by one, the great monstrous ghosts that haunted your long career are captured, named, and understood. You read the journals, and it is like reading the final, triumphant chapter of your own life story. You read the work of a British biochemist named Frederick Gowland Hopkins. The paper describes a simple, elegant, and revolutionary experiment. Hopkins has been trying to create a purely synthetic diet for his laboratory rats. He has fed them a carefully measured mixture of all the known, essential components of food, purified proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and mineral salts. He has provided them with everything that the science of your day believes is necessary for life, and his rats are all dying. They fail to grow. Their coats become rough. They become weak and sick. They are suffering from a kind of universal, non-specific deficiency disease. But then, Hopkins describes the second part of his experiment to another group of rats, eating the same synthetic diet. He adds a tiny, almost insignificant, amount of fresh milk, just a few milliliters a day, and the results are miraculous. The rats begin to grow. Their coats become sleek. They become healthy, active, and strong. Hopkins concludes, in the careful, understated language of a true scientist, that there must be unknown accessory food factors present in tiny quantities in foods like milk, which are essential for health and for life. You put down the journal, your hands trembling. You stare into the fire. An accessory food factor, a substance whose absence causes sickness. It is your own theory. It is your sickness of absence. Described in the cool, precise language of a laboratory, after almost 30 years of silence, of being dismissed as a crank, of keeping your own radical theory to yourself. Here it is, proof. Scientific, experimental, and undeniable proof. You feel a sense of vindication so profound it is almost a physical pain. You want to weep. You want to shout. You are not a fool. You were right. A few years later, the final piece of the puzzle, the piece that will give your theory a name and launch a new branch of science, falls into place. You read the work of a young Polish biochemist working in London, a man named Casimir Funk, Funk has been studying the work of your old acquaintance from Java, Dr. Eichmann. He is fascinated by the connection between polished rice and the disease of beriberi. But, unlike Eichmann, he does not believe it is caused by a toxin. He believes, as you have long believed, that it is caused by the absence of a vital substance in the rice husk and using the new and powerful tools of biochemistry. He manages to isolate a concentrate of this substance. He finds that a tiny amount of this concentrate can cure a pigeon that is dying of beriberi. He analyzes the substance and he believes it belongs to a class of chemical compounds known as amines. And because this substance is vital for life, he coins a new hybrid word for it. He calls it a vitamin, a vital amine. The name is a stroke of genius. It is catchy. It is scientific sounding. And it captures the imagination of both the public and the scientific community. The word vitamine, which will later lose its E when it is discovered that not all of them are amines, enters the language. And with it, a new science is born. The science of nutrition. The great hunt for the other invisible. Essential vitamins begins. The great mysteries of your long and frustrating career are now, finally, one by one, being solved. Not by physicians like yourself, making clinical observations in wards and asylums, but by chemists and biochemists. In their laboratories, with their test tubes and their lab rats, they discover that scurvy, the scourge of the sea, is caused by a lack of the vitamin that is abundant in citrus fruits. They will one day call it vitamin C. They discover that rickets, the sickness of the bent bones, is caused by a lack of a fat-soluble vitamin that is found in fish oil and, most miraculously, is synthesized in the skin by the action of sunlight. They will call it vitamin D. And decades after your own fruitless search for a phantom toxin in spoiled corn, another scientist, Joseph Goldberger, will prove that pellagra is caused by a lack of a specific vitamin found in meat and yeast. A vitamin that is absent in a diet of untreated corn. He will prove it with a series of brave and dramatic experiments on human volunteers in a Mississippi prison. They will call it niacin, or vitamin B3. The history of these discoveries is a complex one. A story of competing claims and national rivalries. Who was the true discoverer of vitamins? Was it Eichmann? With his chicken experiments, was it Hopkins? With his accessory food factors, was it Funk? Who gave them their name? The academic debate will continue for decades. You, the old retired doctor, sit in your study and you follow these developments with a sense of quiet, personal, and bittersweet triumph. You know that you, too, were a discoverer. You had found the central truth of it all, decades before any of them. But you were a man armed only with observation and intuition. In a world that was demanding laboratory proof, you take out your old, rejected manuscript. You read your own decades-old observations in light of this new science. Everything clicks into place. The scurvy, the rickets, the pellagra, the beriberi, they were all diseases caused by a lack of these vitamins. You were not a madman. You were not a fool. You were a prophet. A prophet who was ignored, but who was right all along. You do not feel bitterness or the need for credit. Your own ambition has long since faded. You only feel a sense of profound relief and of gratitude. The truth has, finally, come out. You decide to write one last letter. Not to a medical journal, not to a learned society. You write a letter to your own grandchildren. You tell them the story of your life. You tell them of the sailors whose old wounds reopened, and of the children whose bones grew soft in the darkness. You tell them of the asylum inmates who were driven mad by a diet of corn, and of the prisoners in Java who were paralyzed by a diet of polished rice. And you tell them the great lesson that it has taken you and the entire world of medicine a lifetime to learn that sickness is not always an enemy to be fought. That sometimes it is just an emptiness, a hole, a space where something essential is missing. So, when you eat your dinner, you write to them. Remember this. Remember that in every piece of fruit, in every green vegetable, in every humble grain of brown rice. There is a kind of small and quiet magic, a magic that your great-grandfather spent his entire life trying to understand. You put down your pen. The great mystery that has haunted you for more than 50 years has been solved. The ghosts have been named, and your own long, lonely intellectual journey is finally at an end. Your letter to your grandchildren is a final act of testimony, a quiet and personal publication of the theory that the great journals had rejected. You are an old man now, and you no longer have the need for the world's acclaim. You only have the need for the truth to be remembered, even if only by your own family. You live out your quiet retirement in the English countryside, a man who has seen the world turn, who has witnessed the birth of the 20th century, and from your small, book-lined study, you watch as the science of that new century finally, belatedly, and triumphantly catches up to you. The concept of vitamins, which Casimir Funk had named, is like a key that unlocks 100 doors at once. A new and exciting field of science, the science of nutrition, explodes into being, and you, in your old age, become its most avid and most vindicated spectator. You read the scientific journals with a magnifying glass. Your old physician's mind thrilled by the great hunt that is now underway, the hunt to isolate and to name the invisible cures, one by one. The great, monstrous, and mysterious diseases that haunted your long career are captured, dissected in a laboratory, and stripped of their terrifying power. Each new discovery is, for you, a personal and deeply emotional event. You read the journals from Cambridge, and you learn that the accessory food factor that prevents scurvy has finally been isolated. They have found the chemical substance in lemons and oranges that cures the sea's rotting sickness. They give it a scientific name, ascorbic acid, and they give it a simpler name, a name that will become part of the language of a new, healthier world. They call it vitamin C. You put down the journal and you close your eyes, and you are a young man again, standing in the Naval Hospital at Portsmouth. You see the face of the old sailor, Thomas Pike, his gums black and swollen, his old wounds reopening. You remember the secret, stolen orange, and the quiet miracle of his recovery, and you feel a profound sense of an old, deep sorrow, and of a quiet, final peace. The angel that lived in the orange finally has a name. A few years later, you read of the work of an American biochemist named Elmer McCollum. He and his team, through their work with laboratory animals, have finally solved the riddle of the bent bones of the poor. They have proven that rickets is caused by a lack of a specific fat-soluble factor, a substance that is abundant in cod liver oil. And they have made the even more astonishing discovery that this same substance can be synthesized in the skin by the action of ultraviolet light from the sun. They name it vitamin D. You stare out your window at the green English countryside, at the pale, watery sunlight, and you see the ghosts of the children of Manchester, their small bodies twisted and deformed, their lives lived in the dark, smoky, sunless alleys of the industrial slum. You remember your own fumbling, inadequate prescription of fresh air. You had the right cure, but for the wrong reason. You were a man trying to describe the color blue to a world that did not yet have a word for it. The final two mysteries, the two great plagues of monotonous diets, are also solved. You read of the final, definitive work of the American doctor, Joseph Goldberger, whose brilliant, if disgusting, experiments you had followed with such admiration. The medical establishment, which had resisted his dietary theory of pellagra for so long, is finally forced to accept the truth. The anti-pellagra factor is isolated, and it is given a name niacin or vitamin B3. You think of the asylum, of the 4 Ds of death, of the decades spent chasing a phantom poison in spoiled corn, and you feel a quiet, bitter anger at the years of suffering that could have been prevented, and you read of the final isolation of the substance from the husk of brown rice that cures the weakness of beriberi. They call it thiamine, vitamin B1, and you think of Dr. Eichmann and his paralyzed chickens in Java. The final, crucial clue that had unlocked the entire mystery in your own mind. The ghosts have all been named, the invisible enemies have been captured, purified, and bottled. Scurvy, rickets, pellagra, beriberi, they are no longer mysterious. Divine curses or miasmas, they are simply vitamin C deficiency, vitamin D deficiency, niacin deficiency, thiamine deficiency. The mystery has been replaced by the quiet and infinitely more powerful certainty of chemistry, and with these discoveries comes a new and revolutionary era of public health. You read, with a sense of wonder, of the new ideas that are being proposed, the idea of fortifying common foods, of adding vitamin D to milk to wipe out rickets, of enriching white flour with the B vitamins that had been stripped away, to prevent pellagra and beriberi. This is a medicine that is beyond anything you could have dreamed of in your youth. It is not a medicine of treating sick individuals with potions and pills. It is a medicine of preventing sickness on a vast, population-wide scale. It is a medicine that understands that the health of a nation is written in its food supply. You are witnessing the birth of the modern world. You sit in your study, an old man who has lived through the entire, vast transition from one age of medicine to the next. You were educated in a world of humors and miasmas. You practiced in a world of germs and bacteriology. And you have lived to see the dawn of the age of nutritional science. A young doctor from the nearby village sometimes visits you. He is a bright young man, full of all the new knowledge. He speaks with great excitement of the new vitamin theory. He tells you that the future of medicine is not in the grand surgeries or the powerful drugs, but in the simple, preventative science of a balanced diet. You listen to him, and you nod, and you smile. You want to tell him that you had this very same idea 50 years ago, in a hospital in Java. You want to show him your old, yellowed, and rejected manuscript on the sickness of absence. But you do not. The battle is over. The truth has won, and it does not matter who gets the credit. The young have their discoveries, and the old have their quiet vindication. You have spent your entire life as a medical detective, hunting the killers that haunted your world. You have chased miasmas. You have searched for germs. You have hunted for poisons. And now you know the truth. The greatest killer of all was not a presence. It was a ghost, a nothing, an absence. It is a profoundly simple and deeply anticlimactic solution to the greatest mysteries of your career, and it is beautiful. You are a very old man now. The 19th century, with its steam engines, its boundless confidence, and its profound scientific ignorance has given way to the 20th. You live a quiet life, a man whose memories are a museum of forgotten diseases and discredited theories. You have seen more than most. You have seen the scourge of the sea, the bent bones of the slums, the madness of the asylums, the weakness of the rice eaters, and you have lived just long enough to see the world finally solve the riddles that haunted your entire career. You sit in your study. The scientific journals of the new age spread out before you. They are filled with a new language. A language of biochemistry, of molecules, of things you can barely comprehend. But they are telling a story that you understand with a perfect and deeply personal clarity. The great vitamin hunt is a success. The new century, with its powerful laboratories and its brilliant chemists, is a heroic age of discovery, and one by one, the invisible cures. The vital substances you had once theorized about in your lonely, rejected manuscript are being found, isolated and named. You read the work of the scientists who have finally, after centuries of suffering, isolated the pure, crystalline form of ascorbic acid vitamin C. You look at the photograph of the small, white pile of powder in the journal, and you see not a chemical, but a deliverance. You think of the sailors in the naval hospital, their bodies putrefying, and you know that this small pinch of white dust could have saved them all. You read of the isolation of thiamine, vitamin B1 from the husks of rice, the cure for beriberi. You read of the final, definitive identification of niacin, vitamin B3 as the cure for pellagra, ending the long and tragic hunt for a phantom poison in corn. You read of the discovery of vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, the cure for rickets. The ghosts that haunted you have been given names. They are no longer mysterious forces of nature. They are specific, identifiable, and preventable chemical deficiencies. The great dark medical mysteries that defined your life have been reduced to a series of elegant, scientific solutions. You witnessed the birth of a new world, a world of public health based on this new science of nutrition. You read in the newspapers of government campaigns to give cod liver oil to poor children to prevent rickets. You see advertisements for new, fortified foods, for breads and milks with the essential vitamins added back into them. The knowledge that was once a radical, heretical idea that you alone held is now becoming a simple, common sense truth taught to school children. You think of the great, overarching debate that defined the medicine of your time. The war between the miasmatists, who believed disease was caused by bad air, and the contagionists, who believed in the new germ theory. And you realize that you, in your own quiet way, were a heretic to both sides. Both were looking for a hostile presence, an external enemy to be fought. You were the only one looking for a missing friend. A young doctor from the nearby village sometimes visits you. He sees you as a living relic, a man who practiced medicine in the dark ages before the great discoveries. He speaks with great excitement of the new vitamins, of the coming golden age of medicine. You listen, and you nod, and you smile. You want to tell him that you had figured out the basic principle of his new science 50 years ago, while looking at a pen of sick chickens in Java. But you do not. The victory does not need your name on it. It is enough to have lived to see the victory won. Your life has been a long, slow, and often frustrating journey of observation, and you have come to understand the very nature of scientific progress. It is not a straight line. It is a messy, winding path, filled with dead ends, with false theories, with the stubborn pride of great men who refuse to see the simple truth before them. It is a process where the right answer can be discovered, and then ignored for 100 years. As it was with scurvy, it is a process where the wrong question can be pursued for decades. As it was with pellagra, you look back on your own career. You remember your own confident education, the certainty with which you once believed in the flawed theories of your time. You feel a profound sense of humility and a quiet sadness for the patients you may have failed. Not through malice, but through the simple, honest ignorance of your age. One afternoon, you take out your old, worn medical bag one last time. You open it. Inside are a few mementos you have kept. A small, hard cake of the useless portable soup from your days at the naval hospital. A dusty, leather-bound textbook on the miasma theory. Its pages filled with elegant and entirely wrong ideas. These are the symbols of a medicine that was always looking for a villain, for a poison, for something to fight. And then you look out your window at your garden. You see the bright green leaves of the spinach, the deep orange of the carrots, the rich red of the tomatoes growing in the sun, and you see the truth. The greatest remedies were never in the physician's bag. They were in the farmer's field and in the grocer's cart all along. The cure was never some rare and exotic substance. It was just food. You close the old medical bag. Your journey is complete. You have lived through the long, dark night of medical ignorance, and you have survived to see the bright, clear dawn of a new age. The great and terrible sicknesses of your past have been defeated, not by a heroic doctor, but by a humble chemist, and by the simple, profound, and life-giving magic of a well-tended garden. The greatest lesson of your long and miserable education is the simplest one of all. The secret to health is not in the fighting of ghosts, it is in the simple, daily act of nourishment. The old doctor closes his medical bag, its relics and its memories now safely put away. He sits in his comfortable chair, the last rays of the afternoon sun warming the old books that line his study. His long, quiet, and often frustrating search for the truth is over. The great mysteries have been solved. The ghosts have been named. And his mind is, at last, at peace. Let the image of him, an old man in a quiet room, surrounded by a lifetime of hard-won wisdom, now gently fade. Your own journey is also at its end. Leave the 19th century behind, with its dark slums and its strange, sad diseases. Leave the laboratories and the hospital wards. Return to the familiar, comforting quiet of your own room, in your own time. A world made safer and healthier by the very discoveries you have just heard the story of. Feel the quiet of the present moment settle around you. The air is still. The only sound is the soft and steady rhythm of your own breathing. Let each breath be a quiet affirmation of your own health, your own holiness, the stories of the past, with their struggles and their sorrows, can now be put to rest. All that remains is the simple, profound peace of the approaching night. The darkness behind your eyelids is a warm and welcoming space, a place of rest, of renewal, of stillness. Allow your mind to quiet. Allow your body to sink into the deep comfort of your bed. There are no more mysteries to solve, no more ghosts to chase. There is only the gentle, easy, and inevitable drift into a deep and dreamless sleep.